The meeting is now live.
Thank you for that. Okay, everyone, it is now 9 o'clock, and so I resume the hearing. I don't think that there's any need for me to do any sort of formal kind of opening this morning. I think everyone's familiar with everyone else, hopefully, by and large. So the same as before, if I can ask people to join with their cameras on, unless they don't wish to be seen on the screen, and to keep their microphones off. And apart from when you're speaking, obviously, and as before, if you could use the virtual raise hand function on Zoom to get into the discussion when you have something to contribute. So okay, matter 29 then, the recent changes to the use classes order. This is a bit technical, and I'll try my best to help out those people that aren't professional planners or otherwise normally professionally engaged in planning in some way. So yeah, on the 21st of July, the government published new regulations, and these came into force on the 1st of September. And these are amendments to the use classes order. Yeah, so I've spelled out, I think, in some detail on my matters and issues paper, the broad thrust, at least, of what that means, or what that does, at least. So it revokes or removes some of the previous use classes, and then sort of rebundles or repackages different types of development into new use classes. And probably the important thing here, or one important thing to mention, is that the effect of those changes is that buildings or land in the new classes specified, changes of use from one of the classes, from one of the uses, or from one of the uses within the class, rather, no longer involves development, which means not only is it development that's permitted, but it's not considered to be development at all. And that's important because it means it doesn't require planning permission. So it is a little bit technical, and so I've put this question. This is issue 29.1 to kind of establish really whether or not, well, really to establish what effect that has on the draft local plan. So what the council's, I'm not sure who I should address in the first instance from the council's side.
Good morning, sir. It's Claire Skills and Laura Allen for North Herts today from the officer perspective, and it's me from the council perspective. Okay, marvellous, thank you. So yeah, I mean, is that a fair summary that I've provided? I can't think of anything else to add that can make it more accessible to the non-planning professionals, if you like. Is there anything else, Ms. Daly, that you could add, or Ms. Skills, or indeed Alan?
Yes, no, thank you, sir. I think that is a fair summary. I mean, all I would add is that in the context of plan making, the council has to produce a plan that's consistent with the framework. And in this case, it's the 2012 framework, which of course wasn't drafted with these use class changes in mind. And so there is some tension, let's say, between what the council needs to do in its plan and the deregulatory nature of the use classes order.
I'm having a slight issue with your sound. I don't know if the problem is at my end, but you cut off just a couple of times there and then came back in. Did everyone else hear everything that Miss Daly said? Yeah, okay, so the issue's at my end. Brilliant. My apologies, Miss Daly. If you wouldn't mind saying that again. You were telling me that the plan has to be consistent, I think, with the 2012 NPPF, and there is some tension in your view between that and the changes to the use classes order.
Yes, that's it exactly, sir.
Okay, could you spell out what you see those tensions as being?
Yes, I mean, to put it in sort of broad or basic terms, it's really that the NPPF is telling the council that it needs to be meeting both employment and retail needs in a context in which the use classes order now permits movements between different uses that were previously regulated.
Yep.
And so in very broad terms, what the council has sought to do through its proposed amendments set out in Matter 29 is seek to spell out where it can the sorts of uses that it wishes to promote within specific areas, and to indicate that where appropriate, it will seek to use conditions or legal obligations in order to ensure that its needs are met.
So just so I'm clear, and just to make sure I haven't misunderstood anything there, are you talking about using conditions, for example, to require that an office stays in an office use and doesn't change to something else that isn't development within the same new use class?
Yes, where appropriate, that is what the council is proposing.
Is that something that can be achieved through a condition? I mean, if you put a condition on a planning permission for, say, an office, can a planning condition prevent the change of use from that office to, for example, retail, given that that wouldn't be development?
Yes, sorry, it wouldn't be development, but it would be a breach of condition. And so there would be, in principle, a means of enforcement.
So has the approach here then been because I think you said, in effect, that the council sort of responded to this where it's appropriate. So that's not to say a kind of blanket approach, but to look at things on a more of a case by case basis. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, sir.
Okay. I understand that. So we've had, haven't we, two documents from the council on this, just so that I'm sure. Again, I think that the second one says it supersedes the first. Is that right?
I'm just going to ask Ms. Steele to explain the difference between the first and second.
Good morning, sir. The ED 203 was our first, so our Matter 29 statement identified that there were policies to be changed, and ED 203 was our first set of more detailed suggested changes. And then on further reflection, we have put in more changes in ED 214. There are, where policies didn't change between 203 and 214, they still remain in 203, but the 214 is where policies have been changed further.
So I do need to look at both.
Yes, you do.
Okay. That being so, I wonder if it's easier to sort of work backwards, because what I want to do is look at the council's proposed modifications in some detail, first of all. Is the best way, do you think? I think maybe the best way is to look at ED 214 first and then go to ED 203. Is that possibly the most logical way of doing this, do we think?
Yes, sir. I think the only changes between ED 203 and ED 214 is that in ED 203 there are some additional policies, and those come at the end of the document. So at page 17 of ED 203, there's policy ETC 7. And then there are the specific policies about Hitchin and Letchworth Garden City. And those do not feature in ED 214 because no further changes were made to them. But beyond that, I think we can simply look at ED 214. And so that seems to me to be the best place to start.
Yeah, okay. I think that seems sensible as well. So we'll look first then at ED 214, and then at the end of that, not to forget to go back to ED 203 and pick up on those policies that haven't by that point been covered. So yeah. First of all, then, in ED 214, you set out those policies that potentially, in your view, I think, might have been affected, and then tell us whether or not a change is proposed or not. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Good. If we look first of all at SP3. Well, no, I'll tell you what I'll do, because here where you say, yes, there's a modification proposed later on in the document, you actually set out in a track changes form what that change in your view should be, don't you? So why don't we look first of all at those policies where no change is proposed, as we go through the list at the beginning of the document. I just want to work sort of sequentially through the document, basically. So SP10, that's a policy about healthy communities. So I've got that in front of me now, as it was originally submitted, at least. The council doesn't see an issue there.
No, sir.
Yeah, I do note that criterion D includes supporting the retention of locally important shops. Is that something that might be affected by the changes to the use classes order?
Well, so the position of shops is that they've been partly subsumed by Class E, but there is also the new Class F2, which includes certain shops of less than 280 square metres selling essential goods and at least 1 kilometre from a similar shop. So it may be that the council can continue to control the loss of those sorts of shops.
Yeah, sorry, what was the new use class? F, what was it?
It's F2, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and SP10 is a strategic policy, isn't it? So it's sort of setting out general intentions rather than anything more specific than that. So what you say that sort of remains relevant even in the context of the changes to the UCO?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is anyone here to talk about policy SP10 specifically? Okay, then the next policy listed where no changes are proposed is SP12. That's about green infrastructure. The council sees no issue there. Okay. ETC2. Yeah, just so everyone knows what I'm doing. I don't know if I made this absolutely clear, but what I'm doing is I'm looking at the council's latest paper on this, which is ED214, and I'm looking first of all at the policies where the council says that there isn't any, that no change to the policy is needed, because then afterwards, as you go further down the document, the council goes into detail about the policies where it says changes are needed. So I'm looking at those first of all where the council doesn't think any changes are required, and then I'll go to the ones where it says that they are. So ETC2 then, I can just get that to hand if you bear with me a moment. Right, so that's employment development outside employment areas. And employment allocations, BA10 and RY9, that's under MM90. Okay, so this does bring into scope clearly employment uses where there is a significant change brought about by the new use classes order. The council says there's not an issue that needs rectifying there. Can you just tell me why?
Yeah, sir. So I think in relation to the first part of the policy, that's looking at planning permission that's being sought for new employment uses, where the council will still be able to control the development. And then the latter part of the policy is about circumstances in which the council will permit the loss of existing employment uses on unallocated sites. And whereas there are certain what we would understand as employment uses that now fall within Class E, there are others that do not, specifically B2 and B8 uses, but also there may be circumstances in which, say, a Class E employment use comes forward as an application for something that doesn't fall within Class E, and then again the council would be able to control the change from that employment use to a non-employment use in accordance with this policy.
using planning conditions. Do you mean?
No, sir. I mean, where if an application comes forward on an existing employment site for development that's not, and for example, not a Class E use, where the pre-existing employment use now falls within Class E, or where the pre-existing employment use is either B2 or B8, then in those circumstances, the council could, if the particular proposal didn't comply with policy ETC2, seek to refuse permission.
Yeah, okay. Is anyone here to speak about ETC2 specifically? Okay. I'll go then to ETC7. Local community shops and services. And I'm looking at the version in MM100. Is that the right one?
Yes, I think so, sir. If it assists, if you look at ED 203, policy ETC7 does feature in that document because there is a suggested amendment to a footnote in the supporting text.
Right, if you bear with me. Right, so I've got, I keep forgetting the numbers, the earlier note.
ED 203.
Thank you. And right, where should I be looking?
So it's on page 17 of that document.
Oh, I've got the wrong thing up. Right, my apologies. If you could bear with me a moment. Page 7, did you say?
17, sir.
Sorry, 17. Thank you. Okay, so what's the proposed change there?
We've just added a footnote there to reference the new F2 use class. and the threshold there of 280 square metres that we thought was relevant.
Right, so that's, well, on this paper at least, it's footnote 15, yeah, is that right? 280 square metres will generally be used as a guide to determine small scale. This reflects the use classes order 2020 and recognises that some such facilities will fall within class E or other use classes. Yeah. Right, okay. Is anyone here to talk about that particular change? Okay. I'll go next then to the next on the list is CGB 2B. Okay. This is community facilities, services and affordable housing in the rural area beyond the green belt, yeah? And the council says no change there, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, just to double check, I'm looking at the version of that policy that is in MM108. Am I looking at the right thing? I'm sorry, I have to double check. You'll understand why, because these, some policies have been changed more than once. So I don't want to be looking at the wrong version.
Yes, I think that's right, sir.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, no change there then, because
Well, sir, it relates to the provision of new community facilities or services. And so there is still a place for it, notwithstanding the changes to the use classes order.
okay, is anyone else here to talk about this policy? Okay. Go then to T1. Again, I'm looking at the version in the scheduler proposed main mods that's been consulted on, and I'm looking at MM119, which is hopefully the right thing. Yeah. Am I looking at the right thing?
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you. Okay. Is that simply because the changes to the UCA has little effect, well, no effect on it?
Yes, that's right, sir. Although if you look at ED 203 on page 18.
I will do that if you bear with me a moment. If I can find where I've put it on my computer screen. Yeah, sorry, page, what was it, Ms. Daly?
Page 18 of ED 203.
Yeah.
In the supporting text to policy T1, there's table 1, and the only amendments that the council is proposing in relation to that table consequent upon the use class order change is just the removal of the reference to specific use classes.
Right, okay. So that's not in the policy itself, but it's somewhere else, is it? Within
yes,
the
it's in this
section.
Sorry. Yes, it's in the supporting text at paragraph table 1 underneath paragraph 7.4.
Right, so that's simply deleting reference to the use classes because
Yes.
they don't exist anymore, or they're
Yes,
not.
that's right.
Okay. If I go back then to ED 214. So we've got T2. That's about parking. No change proposed, is that right?
Yes, that's right. So there's no need for any change there.
Okay, HC1. Can you just remind me what policy HC1 is, where I'll find? I'm looking for it basically in the schedule of proposed modifications. It may or may not be here. It might be that there hasn't been a main modification proposed to that. Can you help me out?
Yes, yes, sir. It's MM155 on page 73 of the schedule of main mods.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a community facilities policy. No change required there. Is that right?
Yes, the policy is about new community facilities, and then the loss of facilities where planning permission is required.
The point there being where planning permission is required.
Yes, that's right, sir.
Okay, NE4. That I'm looking at NE4 as it's set out under MM167. And that's protecting open space. The skills.
So, sorry, Claire, if you want to take over there. Yeah, we're not proposing any changes on that. We don't think it's impacted by the use class order changes as it relates to existing open space.
Yeah, okay, thank you. NEX. I think I've just bypassed. Is that NEX under MM166? Biodiversity and geological sites.
No, sir, I think it's MM168, new and improved open space.
Okay, it's that policy NEX.
Yes, we didn't consider, as per the previous policy, that this required any changes.
Yeah, okay. Right, site-specific policies, then BA10. I'm looking at BA10 under MM211. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Good. No changes here. You say this is employment allocations.
No change proposed here because no use classes were defined, and the allocation is for employment rather than any specific use.
So no reference to the use classes order.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think then, in effect, this policy designates employment areas, among other things. Is that right? At Bondor Business Centre, Royston and Royston Road.
I think so. Bondor Business Centre and Royston Road are policies BE1 and BE2.
Okay. Which is right. I'm looking at MM211, which on the printed out version I've got here starts off. Well, it's at the top. It says Royston Road. Just want to make sure that we're looking at the right thing. I'm looking at the schedule of main mods that has been consulted on. And it says policy BA10, and then I look at the modification.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
first of all about Royston Road. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And then, so there's a green box there that's about the Royston Road site, and then there's another green box that is about designated employment areas.
Yes, sorry, yes.
So yeah, sorry, Royston Road. If you could remind me, that's an employment site, is it?
It is, yes.
And the Bondor Business Centre and Royston Road, as it appears in the second box, are designated employment areas.
Yeah.
And the employment areas, those are existing employment areas, are they, or are they new?
So I think Miss Skills is indicating that those are existing employment areas. I think what you cannot see from the schedule of main modifications is an additional heading above policy BA10 Royston Road, which states new employment allocation.
Right.
I think that might have been the cause of the confusion.
All right. Okay. Sure.
So it's split into new employment allocation policy BA10 and then designated employment areas BE1 and BE2.
I mean, I thought that might be the case, but it's simply just not here on the main modifications schedule. So yeah, okay. So I've got Royston Road allocation, as I understand it, and then I've got designated employment areas at Bondor Business Centre and also Royston Road. These are employment sites. This is land for employment use. So it's something that might the UCO have the changes to the use classes order have an impact on those?
Yes, I think it would have an impact, but I think policies FP3 and ETC1, where we are proposing modifications, would cover those employment areas.
Right. Sorry. So, if you tell me about those, what were they? Are those proposed modifications that we are going to speak about but haven't yet?
Yes. So that's policy SP3.
Yeah.
Which is employment, and policy ETC1, which is appropriate uses in employment areas.
Right, okay. We'll come on to that then in a moment. I'll move then to RY9. Employment allocation. And is it the same answer that SP3 and ETC1 address the issue?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay. RY12. Retail allocation. That appears, unless I'm missing something, to be a policy that doesn't feature in the schedule of proposed main mods that's been consulted on. Is that right? Does that mean I actually get to look at the plan itself?
Yes, that's right, sir.
Quite a refreshing change. Okay, so that's allocating 4,000 meters squared of town centre use floor space with residential above. Yeah, so this one then the council says not affected by the changes to the UCO. Anything to add?
So yes, that's correct. I think just to sort of add to that, it just refers quite generically to main town centre uses, which are sort of defined in the MPPF. But it doesn't go into specific uses within the use class order.
Okay. Right, so that, as I have it, is certainly in the, I've forgotten the number again, the council's second paper, ED 214, is it? Brings us to the end of policies where no change is proposed. Do I need to look at ED 203 to see further policies where no changes are proposed or not? Does that complete the exercise?
Sorry, sir, did you say when no, do you need to look to ED 203 to see whether there are further policies where no changes are proposed or where there are changes that are proposed? No, there are no further policies within ED 203 in which no changes are proposed.
Okay. Good. Right, so hopefully, as we discussed earlier, hopefully the most logical way of doing this now then is to stick with ED 214, because parts of this at least supersede some of the stuff in ED 203. Yeah. And if we start with the change to policy SP3, is that the best way to go about it? I think it is, but tell me if you think that there's a better way. Right, I'll take the silence as meaning that it is the best way. Okay, policy SP3 then. And just so we're clear, we are looking at, as I read this document, the modifications that are shown in yellow highlight. Is that right? Just the yellow highlighted bits?
It's the yellow highlighted bits that are the new proposed changes. Anything that is black bold, struck through, or red bold have already been consulted on, I think.
Yes, those are legacy main modifications, if I can put it that way. So yeah. So we are looking then, as I was right for once, so that's good. We're looking at the highlighted sections here. Right, okay, so the the change to, excuse me, to part B of the policy is to spell out, is it, the types of uses that we're talking about?
Yes, sir. The previous policy, the previous wording of the submitted plan didn't include any use classes, mention of any of the use classes, and this is the text has been inserted to spell out appropriate uses for the employment areas.
Okay. D then, part D of the policy, a proposed change there.
I think that was to make it clear that there are in the strategic site policies, there is provision for employment areas, and I think that's just to spell out where those strategic allocations are.
Is that particularly a change brought about by the use classes order particularly?
No, I don't think. I think it's a consequential rereading of the policy.
Okay, just a general point. So these proposed changes this is the only format that I've been provided them in. I think I haven't seen them in the sort of, you know, the table form that we use for consultation, the table format, I should say, that we use for consultation. So what's going to be helpful to me and to others is that when these proposed changes are put into the main modifications schedule, if it's clear, because we are including at this stage at least a column in that table that sets out the reason for the proposed change. In some cases, you know, it's quite obvious to everybody. So I note that on the schedule of main mods that's already been consulted upon, for example, you will sometimes have put things like for effectiveness, and you don't really need to say any more than that because it's blindingly obvious to all concerned. But this is one area where things might be a little bit more complicated than that, and so I would like to see in the table proper reasoning where it might be necessary to help me and others understand. So and in so doing, this change at part D that we've just picked up on, obviously just make it clear, because in here it's been sort of badged as a use classes order, as a modification required as a result of the use classes order changes, as in fact it isn't, is it? And you know, I wouldn't want to get that wrong in my report reasoning.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't have got that one wrong, but you take the point. Okay, so part E then to policy SP3, permit an appropriate range of offices, research and development, light industrial or B class employment uses within these areas.
Yes, sir. In the proposed modification schedule, which was 014, criterion E was deleted in error. And so we've put that back in to set out that appropriate range of uses within those employment areas.
So we've got offices, research and development, light industrial or B class employment uses.
Yeah.
That's right, is it? B class employment uses, what is that now?
B class are the B2 and B8 because they have remained the same.
Right, so I think in effect what you're doing there is replacing, I think, what was previously B1 with words that explain those types of uses. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And in G as well.
Yes, the same thing.
Okay. H then. So this is in red, but it's not highlighted. Is this a use class order change?
I think it must be, sir, because it's not in the proposed modifications, so this has been added.
Yeah, actually looking at it, because previously it said non-B class sectors, I think, didn't it? And
Yeah.
again, I think what you've done is simply replaced B class with what is now B class plus words for what was B1.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And deleted all of the references to the youth classes at paragraph 4.19.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Right, so I don't need to look at, right, so I'm looking then for the next change that's highlighted. Yeah, so the next one I think is paragraph 4.26, is that right?
Right, yes.
Industrial general, industry and storage and distribution. Yeah, that doesn't tell me what was there previously.
No. 4.26, that's an insertion of text into the final sentence of 4.26 in the submitted plan. It said the plan therefore makes employment provision at above modelled levels, and that's an inclusion of text to link it back to the studies that
Right.
space.
Right, okay. So that is just sort of spelling out what you mean by employment provision.
Yes.
Okay, paragraph 4.28 then. significant employment allocation for certain E-class uses. And let's just hope that the UCO doesn't change anytime soon, because you are still including some references to use class in the plan. Right, okay, so again, that's just simply a case of spelling out what's meant, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
Okay. And the same for paragraph 4.33.
Yeah.
B-class uses will not be solely confined to designated employment areas. Employment premises are located inside supported. Right, okay. So that's presumably removing the reference to B-class there because it no longer contains premises, and the rest of the remaining paragraph does the job anyway.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Paragraph 4.35.
I think that is an amendment which is not directly related to use class order changes.
I think that too. .36 then. Let's have a look.
Is the addition of some explanatory text.
All right, okay, yeah, but just because those are the things that were B class but no longer are.
Yes.
So you're, yeah, okay. So that's quite obvious. Yeah, okay, I'm just looking at where's it gone? 4.36, and the last insertion there, the role of these sectors in the overall employment balance of the district is recognised and will continue to be supported where appropriate. I wonder if that where appropriate is an important phrase that links back to what Miss Daly said right at the beginning of this discussion, where conditions might be used.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I have got that right. I know you just said yes. I just want to be absolutely sure that that is right, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It might be that we simply just haven't got there yet, but 2 points on that. First of all, because this is text supporting policy SP3, and I wonder if that's something that ought to be in the policy rather than just 2 words in a supporting paragraph a while afterwards, if that's the council's approach.
We can have a look at the wording.
I mean, I wonder, I mean, I understand what the council's approach is because it's been explained to me. Is there a modification put forward here that explains that approach? Because, you know, that phrase where appropriate sort of, you know, leapt off the page at me because of what I've been told earlier this morning. But should that approach and where the council might look to use conditions be something that's set out in the plan for transparency and effectiveness reasons? And if so, is it, have you put forward a modification like that?
I think there are some modifications in the development management policies which include a reference to legal conditions and planning conditions rather than in the strategic policy that SP3 is.
Okay. Okay. So is that something that we're going to come on to in a minute?
Yes.
Well, in a little while, put it that way, maybe perhaps not in 1 minute, but okay. Okay. So policy SP4 then. Town centres, local centres and community shops. We have the addition of and service, retail and service facilities.
Yes, so this is to tie the policy together. So you might see further down in the policy reference to main town centre uses at Part B. So it's to recognise the wider range of uses that the policy addresses, including offices and professional services as part of that.
Okay.
Within the main town centre uses.
I don't. I'm not sure about this one. Is that a change? Is that brought about by the UCO changes?
No, I don't think it would be.
I don't think so. Okay. Part A then.
Yeah. This is a point for clarity, stipulating different uses and for effectiveness.
That one might be a little bit more UCO related, mightn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. C.
This one, we've got a insertion of a footnote where it says comparison and convenience goods. And again, that's a clarity point. We've changed that again as we have in Part A for clarity and effectiveness. I think something to add to that second part of the policy there, reading across from SP4 to ETC4, there's a discrepancy in that in SP4 we're including cafes and restaurants within the primary shopping frontages, and in ETC4 we're not. So that is a discrepancy that has happened between different versions of the modifications. So what we would propose there is a modification to Part C to remove cafes and restaurants.
Right. So where I'm seeing cafes and restaurants there, that shouldn't be there. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's correct, sir. Yes.
Right. Okay. Mr. Amos, was it on this point, or did I simply not see your hand up and it's been there for a while?
No, it's on point C. There will be a couple of bits as we move through this policy as well. So I don't know if you'd rather deal with them individually or at the end.
I'll tell you what. I'll take. Well, thanks for giving me that heads up on that. I'll maybe carry on going through it with the council and then come back. Okay. D then.
Yes, sort of similar to Part A and Part C. That's just for clarity and effectiveness and stipulating the uses. And also the deletion of reference to A class as a result of the UCO changes.
So to ensure the district's towns maintain their role and market share, make provision for up to 38,100 gross square metres of additional floor space over the plan period, comprising shops, financial and professional services, cafes or restaurants, pubs or drinking establishments or takeaways.
Just
38,100 relates to that list of things.
No, so we'd need to delete reference to professional and financial services from Part D to take into account the capacity assessment figures.
So you need to delete. So that's just so I'm clear about this. You say now that bit's wrong. Yeah, you'd need to take out financial and professional services. Did you say?
Yes, that's correct.
What about cafes, restaurants, pubs, other drinking establishments or takeaways? Are those things all embraced by the 38,100?
Yes.
Okay. So you have reference to the financial and professional services in Part A of the policy, promote, protect, enhance. And is that if that reference is coming out of Part D, would that policy then still do what the council intends that it should?
Well, D refers to the floor space figures, whereas A and B refer to kind of wider uses within town centres.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it could be moved from Part A as well.
I wasn't necessarily suggesting that. I suppose the reason I put this is because you're saying to me, Part D is talking about what the plan, what the council aims to achieve in terms of various types of uses, including financial and professional. But okay, we've established the reference to financial and professional services is wrong in that context because that's about specific floor space.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you removed that reference from there, which I think you will need to, does the policy still say what it needs to say in relation to supporting financial and professional services?
Yeah, I think we would still want to support financial and professional services in the town centre. So in parts A.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is, does it matter removing that reference from there as you need to from Part D? Does that matter? Because have you got sufficient reference in this policy in any event because it's there in Part A in terms of the financial and professional services element?
Yes, I think that would be sufficient to retain it at Part A, but to delete it in D.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and the still in Part D, but Roman numeral 3 is a straightforward deletion of old use class numbers, isn't it? I think.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay. Just see for blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm wondering what I think I might just do here is, while we've got this policy fixed firmly in our minds, is to finish just going through SP4 and the supporting text with the council, then take the morning break, and then come to you, Mr. Amos, first of all, with your comments on it. So as I have it, then we go to a new paragraph 4XX.
Yes, so again,
Okay.
this follows elsewhere in the policy further up in stipulating specific uses.
Yeah, okay.
But yes, as noted before, there's no reference to financial and professional services within that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, paragraph 4XX is just simply spelling out what's what, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it's just a clarity point.
Yeah. Right, paragraph 4.41.
So again, yes, this is a further clarity point. But as mentioned above, the reference to cafes and restaurants within the primary shopping frontage, we would want to delete that from the mods.
Okay. Paragraph 4.44.
I don't think this directly relates to these class order changes, but it's just something consequential.
Yeah, it's that's not a UCO change, is it?
No.
Neither is 4.46. That's simply to recognise that the COVID-19 pandemic may have effects on retailing and shopping patterns. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay, which brings me to the end of that exercise in relation to policy SP4. So as I said, I'm going to take the morning break now and then pick up, first of all, at least, on SP4 with Mr. Amy's. Can I just, I know I've asked you this before, a long time ago, but how do I pronounce your surname? Or how should one pronounce it?
My mother always used to say Ames as in James.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I will certainly get it right from now on, Mr. Ames. I'll probably end up calling you Mr. James, but okay, I now make it 10:33. I adjourn the hearing to resume at 11 o'clock. Thank you. And yeah, please don't actually leave the meeting. Okay, it is now 11 o'clock, and so I resume the hearing. As promised then before the break, we're looking at the Council's proposed modifications to policy SP4 as a result of the changes to the use classes order. And as I promised, Mr. Ames.
Lovely, thank you. I'm just going to give a couple of general comments and then go into the changes to the policy, if I may. But by way of context, we're looking at this from a Letchworth Garden City perspective. We own the freehold of the whole of the town centre and rent out about half of the commercial premises in the town ourselves. And I do appreciate the tension Ms Daly mentioned at the beginning, trying to utilise the 2012 planning policy framework. But our view is that the updated use classes order is also of status, perhaps greater status, and particularly in that is trying to seek to give the flexibility to town centre managers, landowners and so forth, an opportunity to make town centres thrive. And unfortunately, that will not be retail led. It will be a range of activities to create an experience, including housing, in addition to retail. And it's quite interesting to look at when the amendments to the use classes order was launched. The government's announcement was titled Flexible Uses in the High Street. And in that statement, it talks about the capability for businesses to convert premises, says about the need to think flexibly about how to best support our high streets, and also an ability to adapt quickly or to change to housing in due course. And this is where our concern lies about the revised wording to the policy, because in order for our town centres to thrive, we do need a range of uses as well as retail and in our primary areas. And this policy doesn't recognise this in its latest version to the degree that we would hope. And in particular, the changes from ED 203 to the version now, the latest version. And there have been some changes to this policy of significance that we are concerned about. So on A, on SP4, policy SP4, the ED 203 version, that directly mentions protect and enhance the provision of Class E uses and other appropriate uses. That was something that we were pleased to see. In the version that has just appeared, that is no longer the case. And we have some quite specific uses. And in the discussion that we just had, I do feel a bit sorry for the old A2 uses, banks, building societies that play such an important role in activity levels in town centres that are almost not being downgraded, but are not being supported to the degree that we would hope. Again, on C, the ED 203 says in primary shopping frontages, Class E uses would be concentrated, bang in line with what the government is seeking. But now, this latest version changes that to more specific uses. And in actual fact, we think that what that should be saying is Class E and drinking establishments in primary areas. And we can talk a little bit about that when we come to ETC 4 a little later, I guess. When we move into D, again, financial and professional services, sitting neatly within Class E, are no longer mentioned here from the discussion that we've just had. So overall, we're worried that the aspirations around the changes to the use classes order, appreciating the challenges that the council have over the 2012 policy framework. But the aspirations around that are not being met. And what does that mean on the ground? Well, for us, we are as an organisation, our most difficult year in our history. But trying to let premises, trying to create interest and excitement in the town centre to create an experience, to supplement and support the retail, this is very difficult. And the tightening around this policy, it does create challenges. But also it creates a paradox, because ultimately, for existing premises, Class E kicks in. So this is completely contrary to what the council is actually able to achieve on much of its town centres because of the ability for change of use. The final point from us on SP4 just relates to the table at the end, where we have the breakdown of delivery of retail floor space. And I appreciate this isn't a modification, but we did ask in our representations that there is recognition of the vacant units, which, as you can imagine, are increasing at pace at the moment, is recognised throughout the plan period and not just in the first phase. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So if you just bear with me one moment. Okay, just before I come to you, Mr. Webb, a question for the council. The change in approach between ED 203 and ED 214 in relation to Class E. Why the change of heart?
So this was deemed important for consistency with the NPPF, which hasn't as yet been amended, and that does say that local authorities can specify what types of development they want to see and where within town centres, and they are able to designate primary shopping frontages and secondary shopping frontages, which we're doing in the plan.
Yeah, so I don't think my question was so much about primary shopping centres. Sorry, I have to apologise. I can't get the two things side by side. But yeah, in relation to part A of the policy, you've removed the reference to Class E, and as I understand it, taken a more limited approach in ED 214.
Yes.
Why?
Just so that we have some control over which uses, when we do have to determine planning applications, which uses that we want in those areas and which ones we don't, and which ones might harm the town centre. But we do acknowledge, and we've addressed this in previous main modifications, about the need to monitor what is going on in the town centres through the town centre strategies and a review of the evidence base as well. I think the position currently as well is that the unprecedented nature of the pandemic means that if we start changing policy direction, we don't really know what that might mean long term currently, but we're already setting out in main modifications that we want to take early review work.
Yeah. Is it right to say, do you think that there are a few things going on here? The first, as you mentioned, being the impact of COVID-19 on high streets and retailing. Also, the changes to the use classes order and how the market might react to that. Obviously, those changes only came into force in September, so presumably, then it's right to say we don't know at the moment what impact that those changes to the use classes order are going to have, but that also there is still a requirement on the council to meet identified needs for employment and retailing. This is the area of tension, isn't it? And I think what you're saying, Miss Allen, is that well, you didn't quite say this, so I am. Oh, sorry, bear with me. My apologies. Sorry, I've lost my thread now. So I was interrupted by something about my computer popping up on my screen, and I thought that I was going to be, for some reason, forced out of the meeting, out of this hearing, which is why I needed to attend to it, and it slightly put me off the point. Yeah, there are those things going on that we don't know what the effects of them might be, but that nonetheless the council is still required to ensure that the identified needs for employment and for retailing are met. Yeah.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Yes, we need to identify where we're going to meet identified need.
But meeting that need, and this is probably another part of the tension, it is in a context whereby changes of use will be allowed to happen without the need for planning permission, and therefore those things would be outside the council's control. And I think what you're saying, or what you're implying at least, so if this is definitely what you're saying, let's get it out there, is that where there is the need for planning permission, you want your policy to be more restrictive, or to give you more control at least, than you previously thought you might need when you produced ED 203.
Yes, correct.
Right. And you mentioned as well the review of the plan. Yeah, I've forgotten precisely what, I mean, obviously I haven't seen detailed wording for the proposed review policy, because the council's working on that, drawing that up at the moment. And I can't recall whether the council said previously that that is something that would make specific reference to these sorts of issues in relation to employment and or retail needs?
Yes, we have. So we've got a series of main modifications, 017, 019, 260 and 313. And that is shown at SP4 Part E, and that is to update the town centre strategies, which will be used to inform whether a review of the plan's retail strategy is required by the end of 2023. And I understand that that would be undertaken 12 months after adoption of the plan.
Right.
Which we consider to still remain relevant given the current economic context.
So I think, in effect, what the council's saying is that this policy remains sound, but nonetheless, we know that things are changing. We are going to be doing quite a bit of work in relation to retail strategy, and to see what that tells us, to inform the early review of the plan.
Yes. I think I'd also like to add to that as well, so that at ED 168, you wrote to us questioning about this issue about flexibility in Letchworth and Hitchin town centres, which we have addressed through main mods 255 and 306. So this is to propose that we monitor such projections as part of our monitoring framework over the plan period to help inform decision making for any applications that involve retail. So at that point, we're already addressing the need for the policies to be effective and looking at kind of what's going on already with retail trends.
Okay. Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Inspector. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
That's good. Okay. Good morning. I shall need a few minutes, if we may, because we're hanging a wider concern onto policy SP4, and particularly SP4C in regard to town centres. And it's really a reminder about the need to look to housing as well as other town centre uses, with reference to the use classes order changes. Is that all right with you?
Yes.
Thank you. So what I'm going to say is related both to what Mr. Ames has said and what Ms. Allen has just said. And it's about a direction of travel, as I said, in regard to housing. You asked, do any of the local plan policies need to be modified to reflect the changes to the use classes order? We say yes. The policies need to be modified, though on a rather different basis to that of the Council's approach. In our view, the Council has taken the changes made to the order and applied them by editing the paragraphs of the draft plan quite properly. But this we see as a minimal legalistic approach and not what's called for by the government through the instrument of this order. In our view, the changes to the order are substantial and radical to reflect a shift towards flexibility of uses in town centres, That's been mentioned several times this morning. And there's more to follow by the 31st of January next year. That's also been mentioned, I believe. Indeed, the government has expressed these intentions clearly in a briefing note titled Flexible Use on the High Street, dated 18th September 2020, to which I think Mr. Ames referred. It's very clear. If I may, I shall explain by example our reasons why we regard the plan as unsound unless and until it is revised to embody the implications, that's the key word, the implications that we consider have not been properly addressed in depth by the Council's proposed modifications so far. Now I'll focus on Letchworth Garden City because that's what we know best. To us, the most obvious example of the lack of interpretation of the new use class order, that's in terms of a governmental direction of travel, within the Council's modifications, is the fact that the concept of primary and secondary frontages remains within the local plan. The way we see it, if permission is not required for change of use within a class, then it appears it will not be possible to maintain an area of the town centre with only, say, shops, restaurants and cafes. From ED 203 to ED 214, we have seen the Council change what will be allowed in primary frontages from just retail to retail, cafes and restaurants, while recognising that planning decisions that the Council has made in recent years were out of line with the local plan. Would it not be better to remove these restrictions and let town centres find the mix of businesses that are viable for them in the very uncertain years to come? For example, and this is something we actually like, 47 one and two bedroom flats are now on the market in Letchworth Town Centre following a redevelopment of prime retail space, with shops at ground floor level and flats located on floors 1, 2 and 3. This is an example of the benefits that can be achieved from revisioning areas of the town centre. The Letchworth Town Centre strategy was last updated in 2007. Hitchens in 2004, Baldock's in 2006, and Royston's in 2008. Shopping behaviours are very different today from those of so long ago, and changes are continuing. Our perception is that the Council is holding back from reviewing the town centre strategies until after the local plan process is complete. If, as we expect, such a review would identify a significant potential for dwellings in the town centre areas, then this would weaken the argument for exceptional circumstances for building housing on the green belt. This failure to consider the town centre housing options when the opportunity has arisen is making the plan unsound and increasingly unsound. We argued during Matter 22 that the town centres are likely to provide all the housing buffer that the Council needs and may well reduce the need for greenfield development if opportunities for town centre dwellings are fully explored.
You'll forgive me, Mr. Webb. Yeah, I understand the point, but it's not one that I'm going to hear about this morning.
Right.
I'm definitely going nowhere near the question of exceptional circumstances and housing supply in that sense. I mean, I get the general point about capacity of housing in town centres and how the changes to the UCO may or may not play into that, etc. So I totally understand the point, but I'm not going to go on to talk about green belt and exceptional circumstances today.
I've just skimmed my notes with what you've just said in mind, and I see nothing that escapes what you just said. So I think I've I think I've finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Norgan.
Good morning. I have to say that much of what Mr. Webb said just now, I would agree with. And I, as in my first paper to you, I looked at Letchworth and I saw the 47-unit luxury home development that Mr. Webb is talking about, and I saw the 11 completely empty units plus a large Argos showroom, and the council has talked about the Wine, where there's 3 empty shop units. And I gather that footfall, just to give you a figure, footfall from November 2019 has dropped 64.4% across UK destinations, when they've looked at what it is in November 2020. So that's a massive drop. And Theo Perfitis, the retail entrepreneur, has said that online shopping has been catapulted by about 5 years because of the pandemic. My view is that these youth classes are giving the council the opportunity to use spaces as a mixed use, and an opportunity for architects to be extremely inventive. And I can see from today's words from the council, and even what you've said, that they are deliberately being very restrictive when they should be, in my opinion, very much more imaginative in their looking at town centres. I'd agree in some degree with what Mr. Ames has said. When you look at the rents that are falling, you're looking at retail units that are completely empty. What the council should be doing is looking at place, looking at quality of design, and looking to what the community is wanting. And it's quite sad when you walk around Letchworth to see what it's currently like. And I just think the council should be very much more imaginative in taking the opportunity that the government is giving them to reimagine town centres. And this is what Stevenage Borough Council is actually doing. They're looking at office space where they've got buildings that are not being used. They're turning them into residential units. And also improving the town centre. And I don't see that by restricting things that North Herts District Council are actually taking the opportunity that the government is giving them to make changes. And that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Mr. Webb and Ms. Norgan, I think you've both forgotten to put your virtual hands down. Ms. Cotier.
Thank you. I'd like to pick up on some of those points. The one about the regeneration in the town centres. Luton has got some clear regeneration policies in its plan, and they've been putting them into practice rapidly. And I think they provide a good neighbouring example of what can be done in a very short period of time with empty commercial space that is either shop, office, or even buildings that have just laid empty for a very long time. And I did, in the Cotier appendix documents, provide a lengthy 2-part document where I provided some of the press releases of delivered regenerated developments. And I also mentioned I would provide some other information about where and what and how many were being delivered and at what rate. But there we have an example of how this can be done, and they're very determined to do this, and it's working. And one of the other things is that in this process of land that's perhaps laying dormant or undeveloped, or space that's empty, would it be a suggestion, something that could be perhaps undertaken either by the council or in response to these changes that were put before us about 48 hours ago? So we haven't really had time to formulate any significant written reply to this particular matter in its current form that we're speaking of now. But something whereby there was a running register of land sites, maybe properties, maybe just land, or maybe old derelict land that is owned by individuals that are perhaps land rich but cash poor. So people who would like to develop or put the land forward, that it could be kept as a type of register with perhaps parts to it that would talk about sites, that would list sites that were present and that were open to development or not open to development but were there anyway, to sites that have planning applications on them or people have expressed an interest in, to other sites, a column or a sort of a connected list or a column that includes information on planning applications existent on that, to being permitted, to being delivered, and the numbers or the types, numbers of dwellings that are either in the case where they're laying there could be placed within them, or have already been placed within them in the case where they've been regenerated, used, developed. So a kind of a list that becomes a council and local phenomena both, because, you know, maybe like a small tiny notice in a newspaper next to the obituary pages is not really going to attract the right kind of attention in the quantity needed for promotion of regeneration inside a city centre that is perhaps slowly dying or needs injections of cash, inspiration, human input. Whereas if there is such a running list, word will get out amongst people, boots on the ground, people will come forward to the council to say, hey, I've got this site, or I know about this site. They could then perhaps act as advisors to other people who are coming, developers who are saying, we're looking for sites to develop, maybe smaller units that are not being utilised, maybe owned, but the owners don't have the money to perhaps develop them immediately, whereas perhaps somebody else does, and there could be some sort of connection process going on. Because I've got some, I mean, that's the general feeling. I can report that as a general point of reflections. I haven't had much time to gather them together because, as I say, 48 hours ago with a lot of other things going on. So unfortunately, but that's what's coming at me from all directions of all the different parties I'm in connection with. We're saying overall as a number of groups that, you know, let me just check I've got everything I wanted to say on this. Yeah, so it could be beneficial to know the number of dwellings, like a running record of it. I'm just making sure I've covered everything. Empty, and to know the number of dwellings. And others, extras, as extras are being realised, is anybody keeping sort of like a record of this, and could it not be used, even smaller sites, towards a 5-year land bank of perhaps smaller and brownfield sites to assist perhaps smaller developers who don't necessarily have the liquidity to sit and not develop a site for 5 years, just hanging on to it. They don't have that type of backup cash, so they might, be able to turn it over quickly. And we're asking also, during this EIP process, which has been running several years now, there's been many developments that have taken place. So one such example was 116 dwellings at North Herts College, which, have been come as a sudden extra. So we're just wondering if at the outset of this procedure, we would have had such a list that would have facilitated a lot, like a great resource that we would have all benefited from. And since we're at the point now where we've still got 3 years left before the government's adoption deadline, rather than deferring this to the review only, we'd like to suggest that perhaps we could put input, we could do the work, or they could do the work, or it could be a combination of the two, where this resource could be built. We could, if we're allowed to put anything in further, well, initially actually on this ED 203 document, we got some futures that we've got many things we can put forward to this, and we're in contact with lots of people, and lots of people are in contact with me and each other as well. So we have a big resource that we could take advantage of now, seize the moment. We've all got maybe a little bit more extra time on our hands because we're not traveling to and fro work quite the same way. Pause for thought and use this as the opportunity to build, or at least begin to build. And in the compiling of those details of sites, we will be able to find out how best to structure a registry, what type of columns would be required, and if there would be, what kind of nodes within the database, as it were, would be required, whether it would be separated into, sizes, or it could be brownfield, then commercial, what areas, and perhaps ultimately plug into similar registries across the housing market area, which I think Luton has begun to do. I did talk to Councillor Shaw last year several times, and he has built he has been involved with building a longer brown site list. I mean, I think they've added something like 117 extras to it. A lot of space has been added, and the plan talks about regeneration. I think that's going to feature heavily in the review as well, a lot. So that could kind of intertwine. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say on that. I have another comment, which I don't know whether now's the best time to make it, or about the SP4. Shall I go ahead and do that all in one go? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, so affected by that is directly two strategic sites. One of them, it's no secret, is Luton, which again is no secret that I'm most concerned about out of all of the things. So I sent in some modifications that I wanted to see in that. So I don't need to reiterate what they were. I suggested reducing 2 strategic sites to 1 and crossing out Luton. It doesn't really fit in with, it doesn't show an awareness of the Luton's employment policy. For example, if the neighbouring site is also an enterprise zone, we don't need 2 employment and enterprise zones next to each other, and we certainly don't need them partially on the same site. that was a conversation that we had the other day. Won't revisit that, but will in writing though, but not now. So it's going to conflict. We also have retail in the area that is already not perhaps enjoying the level of custom that it did many years ago, and we have some other in Gypsy Lane. We're going to be getting a new Aldi, which is going to attract a lot of the customers that would have come to this east of Luton Asda, and the retail centre that we already have here in the east of Luton. It's not necessarily used. It's used, but the amount it's going to be used is going to dwindle because there's going to be the Aldi. So whereas a lot of people would come from maybe a bit more further over to the south of Luton to use our Asda, they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to go to probably Aldi because there's going to be a new one opening. So Asda has been losing custom for, it's been diminishing, especially with the fact that people can go to other retail parks. So we don't really have a shortage of retail this side of town. If anything, we don't need the extra competition. However, the enterprise zone that is going to has to be started before May 2021, apparently. It's going to provide some of that kind of thing. It's going to provide shopping within I suppose they envisage the airport terminal or whatever. I don't know how quickly they'll bring the actual airport terminal building in, but that's just doesn't really form a cohesive vision. It's not really complementary development, and it doesn't show awareness of the other neighbouring plans, economic policy either. So I don't think that site should be there. One problem is going to be how people are even going to get there. The road leading in from the Herts side is a country lane. On the master plan that the developers have presented, doesn't look at revising the width of the road.
Forgive me, Miss Cossier. I need to steer you away.
Back to, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason for that is it's not fair on others who have all of that, because
I understand. That's fine. I'm never really sure when somebody says you're gonna focus on this point, because I kind of see everything related to everything most of the time. It's really hard for me, the way I think, to narrow it and restrict myself, because it's just not the way my brain's wired. So, but I'll do my best. It's a good training. This process has certainly helped, because it's quite a restrictive process, but that's actually quite constructive in some ways. So so anyway, so you've got to basically, the practical reason I believe supports removal of that is that you can't actually get there on the road, and you can't fly in on a helicopter. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, and the last point, I'd like to, I think it fits in here. Tell me if it doesn't. And I know we mentioned green infrastructure before. One thing I would like to get the opportunity to do would be to ask, have one request maybe to people, whoever has been Regulation 19 participants, to put forward anything that they have that is innovative towards green infrastructure inside urban environments. I've been gathering up for a long time now. I've got a big file on my computer, and I've labeled it green architecture. And it's just stuff that I've, over the years, I've just seen popped up articles about. In London, they've got this wall, and they give the amount of CO2 that this green wall absorbs. And I was really surprised at how, because it's a whole thing now. They've got these different plants are not all the same when it comes to absorbing CO2. Some plants absorb more rapidly and in greater quantities than others. They stagger them into a kind of a wall, They do actually have one. Well, I have seen one in London. I've seen a few in London. So we've got some examples of that within our own country, but there's also other. They're particularly good at doing this in Spain, and I've even seen projects in Paris. Just haven't, you know. I'd like to kind of show what's out there regarding this vertical planting up walls, this type of thing, and some reflection of innovation inside the plan.
I'm aware of what you're talking about, yeah, but yeah, that is going some way from.
Okay, that's not related either. Okay, so I think the idea then of the running log, I think a running log, and would it be a resource that if we had have had it back then could have been useful, is even useful now? Can it be done? Be that they do it, we do it, or a mix of the two. I think that's really what I wanted to put out there.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I've strayed a lot, perhaps. I was listening to some of my own things, and I get on my own nerves. I was actually like really getting on my own nerves when I looked at the. I was thinking, oh God, doesn't she go on?
Listening to recordings of oneself is never an uplifting experience, I find.
No.
Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Inspector. I'm just following up on a general point relating to policy SP4 in regard to up-to-date information. Clearly, the town centre strategies are not regularly updated. So we are concerned that the council is over-planning for new retail spaces which will not be needed. We want a firm policy in the plan of regular updates of town centre strategies, one overdue review forthwith, and then at least every 5 years, and town centre land no longer required, redesignated. Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to move on from SP4 and continue with the exercise that I have been doing, which takes us to policy ETC1, I believe. This is appropriate uses in employment areas, and we're looking at the changes in the yellow highlight. Yeah, that first change within policy ETC1 is that a use classes order change?
Not necessarily, sir, but that's been inserted for clarity and effectiveness.
Yeah, it just seems to be a bit of rejigging of wording rather than anything directly arising from the changes to the UCO to me. But if that can be made clear in the main modifications schedule, I'd be grateful. Right, so in the second part, the next highlighted bit, that's a pretty straightforward use of words instead of saying B class use, isn't it, I think?
Yes, I think it's more understandable by the layman as well.
Yes, well, it's more understandable to me, particularly with all the changes in these classes order that we've had. So going on then to the final part of ETC1, which is a point that we touched on earlier. So that is saying that as a matter of policy, conditions and legal agreements will be used to limit uses to ensure that development meets and will continue to meet identified employment needs.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, we've discussed that already, so I understand why that's there, and I suppose this is picking up on a point that I made earlier, where this was sort of obliquely referred to in a paragraph, but what you're saying to me is, no, it's not only there, so it's here in this policy, and in fact, it's also in the retail policy that we're going to be coming on to in a minute, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct there.
Yeah, so as I have it then, paragraph 5.1 is also a pretty straightforward use of words instead of referring to B1 and B2 and B8 classes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, just a straightening out. Para 5.5 then.
So again, this is a use class order change, just to sort of strip back what we are now meaning by what we're saying in that paragraph. So for clarity, and to omit certain uses that are now not included within that.
Yeah, okay. So that's a clarity point, and so is the change at paragraph 5.6.
Yes.
5.7, that doesn't look to me like it's a use classes order change.
No, that's correct. That's just to move it up from the bottom bullet point to where it is relevant with town centres.
And 5.9, well, it's just explanation, isn't it, of the proposed change in the policy itself. So in terms of those changes that are proposed by the council, is anyone here to speak on those? Mr. Ames.
I'll be very quick on this. It was just really, again, we've got a change from the previous version to the one received a couple of days ago, where the ED 203 supported Class E uses within the employment areas, which we're very happy to see as a way of introducing more flexibility to what we're able to do with future tenants. So
if you just bear with me for a moment.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just trying to get that in front of me. Okay, so previously, this is in ED 203, the council included employment in employment areas and the employment allocations, BA10 and RY9, saying that planning permission will be granted for Class E, B2 and B8. That now changes to office research and development, industrial processes, industrial storage and distribution uses. So what's the effect of that change then, Mr. Ames, that you're concerned about?
Well, I think the effect is in terms of flexibility as to what we're able to do with premises. So, for example, in the employment areas, uses such as creches, gymnasiums, all of those sort of uses, which are within Class E, would be easily permitted under the previous wording, whereas now we would have to go through a series of tests and challenges, probably market the premises for 18 months or whatever it might be, and all of those sort of things. So it creates another barrier for us to be enabled to create a flexible group of premises which can meet a range of uses. And that is an issue for us, and we were surprised to see that change so late in the day. On that, I can understand the council being concerned about retail warehousing, and I absolutely understand that. And it's not for me to sort of give the reasoning why the council has made the amendments, but I guess that might be one of the reasons. But there are other policies which do pick up retail warehousing, and when that might be the case. We're also,
isn't it right that in ED 203 that would in effect support retail warehousing?
I think that the wording as it stands in that previous version, yes, it would have done.
And is that something that you would want to see?
From our perspective, I think again, we would welcome that flexibility. It's not something that we would actively encourage, I would say, but that flexibility would certainly help us a great deal. Our other point is really, it's, I guess the best opportunity is to mention about the additional element that you've touched on around conditions. And obviously we'll bow to the superior legal minds that we have around the table, but I'm really not so sure that meets the tests for planning conditions. Particularly when we talk about relevant to planning, well, planning at the moment is shifting a wider range, a more flexible approach through the use classes order. And this is very much contrary to that. So I would just raise that as something, we received it at such short notice that we haven't been able to explore that properly. But
yeah, if I can, yeah,
we're a little bit nervous about it.
So yeah, look, just to everybody, really, this is so yeah, I fully appreciate that you know this was only published what a couple of days ago. All of the main modifications that the council has here will be the subject to public consultation. But given that the council had done further, more refined thinking on the issue since drafting ED 203, I decided that it was right for that to be out there so that we could have the discussion today, albeit only, you know, only having had the benefit of looking at the document for a couple of days. So yeah, so there will be an opportunity for you to think yeah, to have longer to think about it.
And that's it for us on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Allen, I suspect this is for you. Was that, to be blunt about it, the reason for removing the reference to Class E, that you didn't want to be supporting retailing potentially on employment areas and employment allocations?
Yes, and it correlates better with our evidence base and how we are planning for employment provision. I think there's also a second point to add as well, that the policy would only apply where planning permission is required. So that doesn't circumvent moving between the new use class order and uses within that, and that
yeah,
flexibility.
it's something that could still happen where it relates to a change of use, because that would be something that would be beyond the council's control. You would never receive a planning application for it. So these kinds of things may well happen depending on market forces. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Cottier.
Yeah, you just said that something that piqued my interest immediately when you said that it wouldn't necessarily have a planning application on it. It would, but of course it would bypass the whole thing, wouldn't it? So that would surprise me. And then I thought, oh wow, or even more necessity to have either an officer in the council or somebody with the duty of keeping track of all that potential conversions going on. Because if it feeds back into the total future numbers, present numbers, then that's part of the total development for either, well, this point I'm making, residential development in the total area. How's that going to connect into the rest of it? That's that just when you just said that, is that right? They just go in, they just change it all, and then that's it. It doesn't. Wow.
This is one of the key things about these recent changes to the use classes order.
Yeah.
So you've got, for example, the commercial business and service use class, which is this class E that we've been talking about. And that includes shops, financial and professional services, restaurants, cafes, offices. And the key thing is that changes of use between those uses are no longer considered to be development and therefore do not require planning.
That's very very Asian, actually, because I lived 20 years in Asia, and they stack things on top of each other vertically, mishmash everything. You go supermarket, dentist, housing.
I couldn't possibly comment on what it might look like.
No, but I mean, it's like this whole use of space, the concept, because when I first went there, I was really surprised to see such a mixture all in one column, ranging from the supermarket to the apartment through to the veterinarian, and you might even have the clothes shop on top. And it was all, but you know, I mean, it worked and it was fun, but it made for a totally different concept of what a urban environment might be structured like. You know, it's different, and the signs on the side going up vertically would indicate, you know, the Asian signs, they go up vertically. You would literally have, you know, you could read the signs going up and it would be a column of all sorts. Yeah, it's just different to how we do it, you know. Here we tend to collect like things together, but it's a different, I'm interested to see that. It could be a bit chaotic, but it could also be positive as well. So yeah, something to keep an eye on, I think, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Anything else on the council's proposed changes to ETC1 and the paragraph supporting it?
I think just to add there as well that the physical constraints of the buildings will also allow for some form of control, although that'll be on a more informal basis.
Yeah, Miss Allen, I'm not quite, I'm not sure that you've gone quite as far as saying this, but Mr. Ames, for example, is looking for greater flexibility. Do you think that the changes to the use classes order in and of themselves will assist in relation to flexibility?
I think it would enable some flexibility. I think there would already be existing flexibilities, perhaps within the use class order changes, if there is an existing employment site. Additionally, existing permitted development rights as well. And as I just mentioned as well, how the buildings and sites are actually already physically constructed could be sort of a natural control as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard this morning, haven't we, that the reasons why the government has introduced these changes is to bring about greater flexibility. So that's certainly the government's aim in making those changes to the UCO. Okay, anything else on ETC1? Right, thank you. I will move then to ETC3. New retail, leisure and other main town centre development. And the addition here is of a footnote to tell us that main town centre uses are defined in the local plan glossary. Yeah, I can't recall whether they were already defined in the glossary or not. But are those uses those that are set out in the 2012 MPPF?
Yes, that's right, sir. They were. It was a dupe. It was a cut and paste from the MPPF into the glossary.
Okay, thank you. And the other change then to ETC3 being the introduction of the the policy heads up, if I can put it that way, that the council will use conditions or legal agreements to limit uses in order to make sure that the identified retail needs are met and will continue to be met through the allocated sites, which we've talked about before. So I don't particularly want to dwell on that. Para 5.13 then is a change, which at least here is badged as a change brought about by the changes to the, can we just call them UCO changes, and we know what we mean. Is that a UCO change?
Not directly, no.
It is a new change though that we haven't looked at before, isn't it? Is that why it's highlighted?
It is a new change. It's a change that's been made in the course of reviewing the whole policy and the supporting text.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, well, I'm wondering what it's about. Primary or secondary shopping frontages, retail uses, preference within the primary, secondary town centres, like inside town centres. So the preference for retail uses then isn't sequentially the primary, then secondary shopping frontages and then town centres more widely, is it? Can you help me out here?
And it's partly to make it consistent with the MPPF para 24.
Paragraph 24, did you say?
I think so, yes.
Sorry, bear with me, I'm just getting that to hand. Okay. Okay, I follow that now. Paragraph 5.16. That's not a UCO change either, is it?
Not, no.
Right, okay. And paragraph 5.20 is pretty much just reiterating what's in the policy itself, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, is there anything else from anyone else on policy ETC3? Then I'll go to policy ETC4. The primary shopping frontages. Right, the first change highlighted then is a very straightforward change to reflect the UCO and use words rather than the use class, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Right, in B, primary shopping frontages, going to the ground floor level 4, to say exceptionally for an A3 or similar. It says now for other main town centre uses. That's a 15, the footnote. So that's for any town centre use.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Not right, okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me, and also that is quite a straightforward swap, actually, isn't it? I think. And if I take ETC 5 at the same time,
yes, so that's just a direct switch between the previous use classes and a more descriptive version.
does that in fact encompass everything that that was previously included there? Everything in A1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Yes, I believe so.
Are you sure?
I'm sure looking at this. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of the old use classes order in front of me. So.
If I'm looking up this direction, I'm looking at kind of the comparison between the old version and the new, and yes, I believe it is.
Okay. And we have the footnotes. Right, okay, that all of that's reasonably straightforward then. So is anyone here to talk on ETC 4 and 5? Mr. Ames.
Thank you. Just very quickly, again, this is one which has had the Class E uses taken out of both of those policies under A, which was previously the wording for ETC 4 that supported Class E uses, which again is something that we welcomed, picking up, not to be repeated, all of those points that we said about flexibility and what the use classes order update was seeking to achieve. So we'd very much like to see that reintroduced to that policy to be more reflective of the government approach, and also to give us a fighting chance of providing that range of uses that we would like to see. On the ETC 5, on secondary frontages, we do think that there's perhaps an opportunity to start to make reference to the potential for a change of use to residential. Now, I appreciate that will come out of discussions on the town centre strategies in the future, in the next few years, won't it? But we think that if there is to be the potential for some change of use to residential, that could well be in the secondary frontage area, subject to a series of criteria. And that would be about protecting the integrity of the street scene, not impacting on the viability and vitality of the town centre. So you're not going to want to break up necessarily parades, which then is harmful to their commercial operations. But we think that within that secondary area, as clearly the need for commercial and retail floor space in particular will diminish, and we all know that, to whether that is the point where that could start to be raised.
Yeah, but what does the council say to that, Ms. Allen?
I think the first point I'd like to make is that the policies would only apply where planning permission is required. So in many cases, changes within E-class would be permissible anyway. I think the second part that I'd like to raise is that with ETC 4 and ETC 5, both parts B there allow for flexibility with main town centre uses or other town centre uses. So that does enable some flex there already, subject to meeting that requirement. I think the other thing that I'd like to add as well is existing PD rights, and sort of secondly, that we've already got a housing supply figure for Letchworth Town Centre for 50 homes plus any windfall allowance as well within that. So just to sort of, we have made provision for that elsewhere in the plan.
Yeah, I understand the point. You'll understand why it's an area that I don't want to go very near. But yeah, okay. So just bear with me a moment. Yeah, okay. Right, anything else on ETC 4 or 5 before I move on? Okay, very good. I'm going to go then to ED 203. It is ED 203, isn't it? Have I got that right? Yes, I would do if I could find where I put it. Right, so if you can just bear with me a moment. Oh, here it is. I lost it on my screen temporarily. Right, okay, so where then do I need to pick this up? I think it was just some policies at the end, was that right?
Yes, sir. I actually think we may need to go back to ED 214 because there is still one policy, ETC 6, on local centres that we haven't yet considered, where there have been further changes from the ED 203 version.
If you bear with me, where's that going? Oh yes, look at that. Thank you for that. I don't know how I missed that. Yeah, good. Policy ETC 6. The local centres policy. Part A then. Is quite a straightforward change, is it?
So it was intended to be a straightforward change, but the uses in D1 and D2 have been omitted from the descriptions.
Yeah, that's, well, I thought that something looked awry. Yeah, so are you saying, Ms. Skills, then that those need to be added?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to work out what's going on in B and then in C, because I've got some text that's purporting at least to be UCO change wording, but there's also struck out.
Yes, I think in B, the modifications 99 deleted the first part of that criterion, but left in the second part, but then proposed to add in the second part of that criterion, which we have now proposed to delete. So it's showing you a main modification, which we would then propose to delete for the use classes order.
So this is deletion of part of an old main mod, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right, so in C then, I think that is at least in part a UCO change, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, then if we go to paragraphs 5.29, that's not really a UCO change, is it? I don't think.
Sorry, sir, I think we've lost Miss Skeels momentarily because of a charger issue.
Ah,
She should return shortly.
okay. I don't know if you can help me out with this, Miss Allen. These are quite sort of general points, I think. 5.29, paragraph 5.29.
Yes. So what was it specifically that you were asking there?
Yeah, I asked. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, is it just an explanation of why we've done the change that we have?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's essentially just, this isn't a youth class order change. I think this is just to sort of recognise that it kind of ties back again to the evidence base and to sort of generally plan for a variety of different uses in local centres.
Okay. Are the other paragraphs underneath that are highlighted, are those new changes? This is 530, 31 and 32.
Yes. Sorry, because I'm sort of filling in for Claire there. I'm not sure, but I think during discussions with Claire, I don't think that was an issue that we discussed in relation to the youth class order changes as part of the latest modifications.
Yeah, I mean, they don't look like UCO changes to me, but are they new modifications?
Yes, I think they are, sir.
Yeah.
They're highlighted to indicate that they are.
Yeah. So you want to delete in all local centres, the council wants to retain local facilities and at the same time prevent changes to non-retail uses that would be more appropriate in larger centres or employment areas. You changed your mind on that.
Yes, I think there must be some reason why we've proposed to delete that, but I'm not 100% sure why that is the case.
Okay.
Perhaps as well that paragraph 5.31, that is deleted as the change of use wouldn't occur anymore. Switching between the two.
It depends what the use is, doesn't it? Depends on the proposed use.
Yeah.
So might it still be relevant?
Yes, sir. I think we might need to take that one away and have another look at it, because I can see that, you know, clearly in some circumstances the council's not going to be able to control a change away from what was formerly an A1 unit to something that falls within Class E. But there are, as you say, other options which may result in a change of, inadvertently the council would be permitting a change of use that it really wouldn't wish to see.
Yeah, there's life outside of Class E. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I don't know whether to just ask the council to just have a look at those 3 paragraphs and get back to me, or whether to pick it up with Ms. Skeels now. Do you want to tell me which is the best thing here? Is Ms. Skeels back on? Oh yes, she is. There she is. Welcome back, Ms. Skeels.
I'm sorry about that. It just cut out.
Yeah, it happens. So I'm just looking at paragraphs 5.30, 31 and 32, which don't appear to be UCO changes. So if we take 5.30 first, I'm scratching my head and I'm not sure why that's proposed. What the soundness necessity is to delete that paragraph.
I think I've just heard Miss Daly say perhaps we should take away the paragraphs to and review them. I think that's probably the best course of action.
If you want to do that, yeah, Miss Daly was talking specifically about paragraph 5.31, I think, but if you want to have a look at all 3 and get back to me, because I'm not quite sure that those are right, and 5.31 I'm quite sure isn't right. If the reason for deleting it was based on the premise that the change of use involved would be within Class E, well, of course, it might not be within Class E. It might be something else. Was the point on that one? So, okay. If you just bear with me. Thank you for that. Mr. Webb. You're on mute, Mr. Webb, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay. Thanks. This may have been overtaken by the council reviewing these 4 paragraphs, but as I understand it, 529 could be accounted for under UCO changes by protection of community beneficial uses. That was in 532, but now appears to be rolled into 529. I'm not sure about 530 and 531, but to me there is a justification under the UCO changes for that community protection theme. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on ETC 6 and its supporting paragraphs? Okay, very good. Which means I think that I can go on to ED. I've forgotten the number again, but we all know which one I'm talking about. Was it 203, isn't it? Yeah, ED 203. So just to help me out here then, I need to pick this up rather than at the beginning, at the end, don't I? Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So you need to be looking at page 19 onwards, which begins with section 13, communities and Hitchin.
I'd also probably add maybe from page 17 onwards, policy ETC 7. We've just added a footnote to that.
I think I picked up on ETC 7 before, didn't I? And
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
So first up then is policy HT11. That's a straightforward swap, isn't it? I think.
That is a straightforward descriptive swap for the uses that were in the policy.
Yeah. And in HT12 as well.
Yeah.
And in LG19.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
And in LGs 20 and 21.
Yes.
And as before, I didn't mention it before, but I did notice the delivery indicators in ED 214 as well. That's all very straightforward stuff, I think. Is it, Miss Daly?
Yes, sorry, sir. I think the intention is straightforward, but in a couple of instances within those policies, for example, HT11, where the intention has been to describe what was formerly A1, A3, A4, and A5. My reading of the suggested changes is that they have missed out pubs or drinking establishments under A4.
Sorry, for some reason, Ms. Daly, the volume that I'm hearing from you is slightly muted, as though you're in a cardboard box.
Oh, right. Is this better?
No, but I just missed what you said. I think you were telling me that that not everything in classes A1 to 1 through to 5 inclusive has been picked up in the wording.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. In a couple of instances, references to pubs and drinking establishments have been missed out. I think it's just a slip.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been included in the Gurnon Road and Arena Parade policies, but not in the others. Is that right? So I think it's HTs 11 and 12 and LG 19 where that needs to be added.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, I would ask just, before the final version of the main modification schedule comes through to me, that you do a triple lock check to make sure that these things are covered, because when I receive that, I'm going to have to go through the same exercise, and it will be much easier if everything's already covered off.
So could I just add that in the case of LG 19, that the original version didn't have A4, so that doesn't require changing.
It didn't, did it? Was that deliberate? Was that an accidental omission? Do we know?
I'm not sure. I can only presume it was deliberate at the time of writing.
Okay. Can I ask that's just checked and explained to me when the alterations to these modifications come through, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's great. So I think then, unless anyone tells me that I've missed anything off, that brings us to the end of the policy changes that are proposed by the council as a result of the changes to the UCO. Have I missed anything?
So could I just add at the end there, I think from reading across the different policies, I think we would like to have a second look at how we are defining A1 currently in ETC 4 and ETC 5, so that it reads across. I noticed that we referred to somewhere else instead of comparison and convenience as shops. So I think we'd like to go with the version of shops, and perhaps that's more easily understood.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I mean, that's probably not a sameness issue in and of itself, but I mean, it makes absolute sense to me to use consistent terminology when you do in fact mean the same thing. So, yeah, Mr. Ames.
Thank you. Very, very quick, and you will not be surprised with what I'm going to say. But we
go on, surprise me, Mr. Ames.
We think that it would be more straightforward and more reflective of the new approach arising from the use classes order if on each of those LG 19, 20 and 21, whether that was to say class E rather than breaking up into specific uses, which will increase the chances of those schemes coming forward. But also on LG 20, there's actually a very recent planning permission been granted for part of that allocation, which would mean that policy aspiration couldn't be met on the Gurnham Road site, LG 20. And I know that when we were talking about industrial sites way back, wanted to make sure that it was reflective of what was on the ground and so forth. This hasn't been implemented, and it's just had planning permission.
Okay, so you're telling me then, I think, that the 1,000 gross square meters of additional the uses listed there, that can't now happen. Is that what
I
you're
don't believe it can, no. But I'd stand to be corrected by colleagues at the council.
Can anyone help from the council help me out on that?
So I think we're going to have to take that away. I mean, I would note that policies LG19, LG20 and LG21 are not as restrictive as they might appear from the amendment set out within the within ED203, and that other main town centre uses are permissible on those sites in accordance with the policy, and in certain circumstances residential uses, so that it is a mixed use policy. And indeed, in relation to the I suppose what was formerly A1, A3, A4, A5 uses, those were subject to an up-to-date assessment of retail capacity and supply. So there was and is some acknowledgement within the policies themselves that things may not turn out precisely as they're currently set out within the policies and the plan.
Yeah, okay.
I think to add to this as well, that the policies apply at ground floor level only as well.
Right, okay. Thank you for that. Is there anything else on these policies? Before I adjourn for lunch, and what I will then do yeah, I don't think oh, Louise isn't here today, is she? Yeah, so I think that will mean that I will be able to open at 2 o'clock and pick up on the agenda for the day on matter 27. So unless there's anything else on matter 29, I will now take the lunch adjournment. Ms. Cottier.
Sorry, quick question. Tomorrow is I understand in the afternoon, like a washing up day, loose matters or something. How does that work? Can we attend? Because I'm not in this afternoon session, so I can't ask.
No, well, it's to be honest, not really. It's not really a sort of open session as such.
Okay, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's an administrative exercise for me to go through with the council, just to make sure that, as you'll see, like today, there are quite a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up. So it's making sure that we know what's happening with all those loose ends and that everything's being picked up. It's basically
okay, I understand. We've got some loose ends that I've written. I've sent Claire Skills and Nigel a list of the missing documents on the inspector's actions list, just to let you know I sent that through. I did receive some indication of where they were, but there's still a number of them missing. So I sent a chart through of all 8 charts, and I marked the ones that we are able to obtain. So I'm guessing we'll get that. It's not just, I'm not writing for only me, I'm writing for everybody that also wants various parts of that. I did specify the ones I particularly need though in my letter, but the charts were for general use for everybody. So I don't know if I'll hear back on that. I kind of need the things that I asked for.
I didn't catch that last bit, Miss Cottier, I'm afraid.
I need the things that I asked for in the letter. I really need that. There's ED documents that were requested as for inspectors' actions, but aren't in the homework and have never been produced. But I need them, so I don't know how I'm going to get them.
Yeah, I know. I don't think you weren't there, Miss Skeels. I don't think, but that was something that was picked up yesterday. I think did indicate that. Well, to put it bluntly, that would get sorted.
Claire wrote to me yesterday, straight after the session, because I think she, although I don't think she was in the session yesterday. Nigel must have communicated to her, and she did send me a reply, but I don't think she knew exactly what I asked for because she wasn't in the session. So she did her best to reply, and it was fine. But then I responded with some I took all the charts that she put me in the direction of the charts of action, the inspector's actions, but they were the ones that I was already saying are mostly missing. So on the white ED documents, I marked with like 2 types of symbol. I wrote a question mark where there was no document as far as we knew. And then I put a sort of a more exclamatory symbol for the urgent things that I personally really could use right now. And just sent that. And I did actually copy in your program officer. So I put that in, and I also copied in the people that were in the session when I asked for it yesterday as well. So everybody knows the request has been put out there, and I sent it directly to the council. But there's a lot of documents, so I don't know how they're all going to make their way into the public forum. That's my question. It sort of is, can't go any further with it on this side.
Yeah, okay. I see Miss Daly's raised her hand and perhaps has something helpful to say.
Sorry, I had actually raised my hand before Miss Coffey began discussing documents, but I mean, clearly council officers have been involved in the hearing this morning, and if there are documents that Miss Coffey thinks that she doesn't have after asking the council, then it's something we can take offline and she can ask again and the council will do its best to assist. Yeah,
yeah, please. Yeah, I mean, basically, as before, the message is, you know, if there are things missing or, you know, can't be accessed or whatever, if we can put that right as soon as possible, please. Okay, anything else?
Yes, so just a very practical point. I have received a meeting invitation for this afternoon session. So should participants in this session be logging off and then logging back in if they are involved in the afternoon session?
Yeah, you do very well to remind me of that, Miss Daly, because it's something I've consistently got wrong throughout these hearings. You are quite right. In fact, we do need to actually leave the Zoom meeting because we have some different participants this afternoon, and Mr. Franklin will have told me by now, I think, if I'd got that wrong. So yeah, if you can actually leave this meeting, that would be great. So thank you all very much for your contributions. It's now 12:54. I adjourn the hearing to resume at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.